What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, guys, so we are going to continue our coverage over the X of Swords event, and we actually pick up with Chapter 9 of this X of Swords event, which is Excalibur number 13. Because remember, this is a crossover between all the X-Men titles at the time. Now, picking up with Excalibur number 13, this book right here gives us two swords to kind of give us a better chance of getting to the big war at a faster rate. Because so far it has been one chapter, one sword. Two chapters, one sword. A break here and there, and then someone else gets a sword. And so far, you have Marvel slowly taking their time of giving us all the different swords for this war. And so right now, this is Marvel trying to move a tad bit faster by giving us two swords in one singular book. And of course, that means Captain Britain, which is Bessie Braddock at this moment in Marvel Comics, and her brother, Brian Braddock. But here we go, Excalibur number 13. I do hope you enjoy this video. And so to begin today's video, we actually pick up with the Starlight Citadel, of course the home of Saturnine. Now remember, Saturnine is the person who's right now having both sides of the war between Arakko and COPPA go out there to gather swords to basically fight in some kind of competition. She's the one behind all the scenes, moving pieces left and right. Now, of course, we actually pick up with Bessie Braddock because, like I said earlier, Bessie Braddock had become the Captain Britain of the main Marvel universe, which was a very huge thing right there. But of course, she's being confronted by her two brothers that were invited to the Citadel by Saturnine. Now, of course, that means Brian Braddock and Jamie Braddock. Now, Jamie is a very cool character, but for right now, he's not that important for this crossover. Not right now, but Brian and Bessie are going to be. And the reason why, because when it comes to Bessie and Brian was the first Captain Britain, but when he lost that power, it went over to Bessie Braddock. Now, after a couple stories in the Excalibur books, of course, Bessie Braddock had the chance to actually hand the powers of Captain Britain back over to Brian, but Brian said no. And the reason why Brian said no, because after a couple storylines, he felt full of rage, and he feels like he cannot be the Captain Britain if he has a body full of rage and wants revenge against different people. And so he basically told her, no, you can be Captain Britain. I am going to go a different path. And that path was the Sword of Might. Now, how it usually works is you have two choices. You can pick up the Swords of Might, or you can pick up the Amulet of Right. Now, usually if you choose the Amulet of Right, you become the Captain Britain. But again, remember, when it came to Bessie Braddock being Captain Britain, when she had the chance to actually give that power back over to Brian, Brian said no, and he picked up the Swords of Might. And so just like that, we have our two swords right here and now. Captain Britain and of course Brian Braddock having the Swords of Might. Now, there's something else I need to mention. When it comes to Brian Braddock, he is not a mutant. He is not. His brother and sister, Jamie and Bessie, they are, but not Brian. Now, with that being said though, of course, Brian has a Sword of Might, which could possibly play in the role of him joining COPPA to fight against Arakko, even though he is not a mutant. Said earlier, Saturnine was the one who had invited Jamie Braddock and Brian Braddock to the Citadel. Now, the reason why, because when it comes to Saturnine is trying her best to have Brian Braddock retake the role of Captain Britain. Because to Saturnine, she does not like Bessie for a lot of different reasons. One of those reasons could be that she is a mutant, but on top of that right there, you do have Saturnine say that she feels like because Bessie Braddock did not actually choose to become Captain Britain, she's a rogue. Let me explain a tad bit more. So usually when you are about to become Captain Britain, you have to choose out of two items, the Sword of Might or the Amulet of Right. If you choose the Amulet of Right, you become Captain Britain. Now, of course, if you choose a Sword of Might, you become a guy with a Sword of Might, and that is really it. Now, usually you have most people choose the Amulet of Right if they're going to become a Captain Britain. Now, this is Saturnine kind of reminding us what happened in earlier books of Excalibur, because with Jamie Braddock having the ability to warp reality and make different realities, he had made different realities where you do have now multiple Captain Britons. And of course, they're all mutants. And of course, they're all members of the Excalibur team, just different universe versions of those members. So there's now a reality where Gambit is Captain Britain, Rogue is Captain Britain, and Jubilee as well. But the thing is, though, for Saturnine, she still feels like those guys right there do not count, because again, they did not choose. They did not have the right to actually sit down and choose between two items, the Sword of Might and the Amulet of Right. Because Jamie Braddock just used his powers to make the reality and then make them automatically become a Captain Britain, to Saturnine, that's not correct. They're just rogue members. They do not count as Captain Britain. And the reason why you have Saturnine, Jamie, Brian, and Bessie having this conversation is because Bessie, Brian, and Jamie, they want to bring back the Captain Britain core. But of course, Saturnine has not done that yet. And she will not use the ones who exist right now because, again, they did not properly choose the Amulet of Right. They just woke up one day with the ability of being Captain Britain thanks to Jamie or other different methods. Now, with that being said, though, you do have Brian say, listen, we need the Captain Britain core. Now, if you're wondering what happened to the Captain Britain core, well, it was killed off completely. And Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, where basically the Beyonders just wreak havoc across the multiverse. But with that being said, though, of course, it's our Braddock family wanting to bring back the Captain Britain core. Now, later on that night, you do have Bessie Braddock and Brian Braddock have a conversation. Now, this conversation is actually pretty important because it's Bessie Braddock wants to know what her brother is up to. Because originally, Brian Braddock wants the powers of Captain Britain back, but he didn't ask for it back. And so basically, Bessie Braddock kept the power, but she knows that her brother wants the power back because he was the Captain Britain of the main Marvel universe for so many years. So she knows that he wants the powers back, but he's not asking for it. At the same time, he won't pick up the Sword of Might. Now, like I said, he does have the Sword of Might with him, but he doesn't use it. And the reason why, because if he does, he becomes somebody full of rage. That's something he wants to avoid. And so right now, he just uses sword kind of like really like part of his outfit. And that's really it. It's on the side of his leg and it stays there. He does not use it at all. But of course, it's Bessie Braddock saying, no, pick it up. Pick up the sword, because we know in the prophecy that Polaris, what she said was, your sword and my sword are going to be part of the war between Arakko and Krakoa. But the big question is, though, can you properly use that sword without going crazy, full of rage once again? But that is something we can't tell because it's Brian Braddock's future. It has to be seen down the road. Now, of course, you have Brian upset with the fact that his sister has not given him his powers back, the Captain Britain powers back. But at the same time, he has not properly ask her for the powers of Captain Britain back. So she's kind of like, no, if you want the powers back, ask for it. But at the same time, you have to let go of the Sword of Might. And so there's really is a lot of confliction here. But of course, it's them two saying they want something to happen, but they're both too stubborn, to let those things actually happen. Now, of course, we actually do pick up with those 4 Captain Britons that Jamie Braddock had made play a role in this storyline. What I mean is this right here, because remember, Jamie did make 4 different realities. In those 4 different realities, of course, he made 4 different Captain Britons as a way to kind of remake the Captain Britain core. Now, with that being said, of course, each of those realities had a certain member of the Excalibur team become a Captain Britain. So Gambit in one universe, Jubilee in another one, Rogue in a different one, and on top of that, you had Richter as well. 4 different realities with 4 different Captain Britons. Here's the thing though. They arrive in Otherworld, and of course, they're trying to kill Jamie Braddock, the man who actually made them. Now, of course, you do have Bessie Braddock and Brian Braddock freak out because they hear the screams of their brother, Jamie Braddock. Now, of course, when they get there, it's hilarious because they do hear his screams. He calls out for guards. He calls out for help. But when they get there, of course, this man, Jamie Braddock, does not need any help at all. Matter of fact, he was able to stop all 4 Captain Britons. Now remember, he made these 4 Captain Britons when he made those 4 different realities. Now, you do have Jamie basically use his powers to kill off the Jubilee version of Captain Britain. Of course, the reality she came from. Now, with the death of Captain Britain Jubilee, that upsets the other Captain Britons that have come from different realities, which of course they now want to attack Jamie Braddock even more. And so right now, they begin the process of actually attacking Bessie, Brian, and Jamie, the entire Braddock family. And of course, the Braddock family do run away to protect themselves, but that is the moment you actually have Brian use the Sword of Might. And this is huge because remember, if he does use the Sword of Might, it basically means he could become somebody full of rage, become someone completely different, but he has no choice to protect his brother, Jamie. Now, of course, with him being able to pull out the Sword of Might, it does show that he's able to actually control himself. Now, this is where things get even crazier because you do have Saturnine reappear. And remember, Saturnine does not like the idea of Bessie Braddock being Captain Britain. Matter of fact, she feels like Bessie Braddock is a fake because Bessie Braddock did not actually choose the Amulet of Right. Instead, she just really was given to her by her brother, and that is it. She feels like because Bessie Braddock did not actually choose between the Sword of Might and the Amulet of Right, she cannot be a Captain Britain. She did not go through the usual ways of becoming a Captain Britain. And so you have Saturnine feel like that basically she has the right to take away the Amulet of Right away from Bessie Braddock. But that is the moment you have Bessie Braddock use her powers to actually destroy the Amulet of Right. That right there is huge because it's Bessie Braddock saying, no, you are playing games here, Saturnine. For some strange reason, you do not want me to become a Captain Britain, only my brother. And also you have some kind of weird affection for my brother. So you have Bessie Braddock just use her psychic abilities to destroy the Amulet of Right. And that right there is huge. So you have Saturnine lock up the other Captain Britons, the ones that Jamie made, but also lock up Bessie Braddock as well. Now, getting over to the prison that basically Bessie Braddock is locked up in, of course, this prison was made by Saturnine. Now, of course, they are nearby a window, but anytime a prisoner tries to jump out the window as a way to escape, they fall right back into the prison all over again. And matter of fact, when Bessie Braddock talks to Gambit, the Gambit of Captain Britain Gambit, you have the Captain Britain Gambit say, listen, Rogue tried to escape by using the window, except she kept falling and falling into darkness, and she only came back here to the prison. She's now really cold in the possibility that she could die, meaning that if you do jump out that window, you're going to fall and fall and fall in pure darkness until you end back up again in the prison, but like lose your body heat. Now, you do have Bessie Braddock get called out by her brother Jamie, who does tell her, listen, ignore all that. Jump out the window. Because if you do it, I'll be there to catch you. I will be there to catch you. And so you have Bessie actually do it. And when she does, she is caught by her brother, Jamie Braddock. Now, this is the moment you have Jamie say, okay, cool. I got one sibling. Now we have to save the other, Brian Braddock. Now, here's the thing, though. The reason why Saturnine is so key on Brian Braddock being Captain Britain is for 2 different reasons. One, because she wants Brian to be the main protector of the Citadel, of course, holding the Starlight sword. Of course, that sword is going to be very important for the crossover of X of Swords, but she wants him to have the Starlight sword, which is basically all the power of the Citadel inside of it. But on top of that, she wants to bang Brian Braddock, which is huge, but at the same time, Brian Braddock is married and he has a kid, but she don't care. She's all like, nah, you're mine and I want to bang you. And so you actually have Brian Braddock and Saturnine possibly going to bang. And so we actually do pick up with Brian Braddock about to get in bed with Saturnine. I mean, this man is making out with her. He's touching her. You're kind of like, oh my gosh, this man is actually going to cheat on his wife. This is crazy. Except this was all part of the Braddock's family plan. Not actual cell phone family plan, but an actual family plan. Because with Bessie being free and Jamie helping her be free, Brian's next goal was to keep Saturnine busy just long enough so that Saturnine can drop the sword of light, so that Bessie Braddock could actually grab the sword of light, because she needs a sword. Bessie Braddock never had a sword in all of Excalibur. Yes, there was a sword, but it was a psychic sword, a sword she made with her psychic abilities, but she needs an actual sword. And of course, the sword she got is the sword of light that belongs to Saturnine, which to me is kind of very funny because it's basically Bessie Braddock kind of giving her the middle finger, like, you hate me so much and now I have your sword and my brother betrayed you and you actually thought my brother wanted to bang you. But either way, you do have all three characters, really Brian and Bessie, being able to get out of the Citadel and use the gate to go back over to COPPA. And so to wrap up this chapter, we actually do see our two heroes arriving back with the rest of the characters who basically have their swords to get ready for the war between Arakko and COPPA. Now, here's the thing though. We only have 7. There are still 3 people left who do not have their swords yet. And the question is though, who are those other 3 characters who need their sword for this crossover event? But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. Also, if you have any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'll see y'all next time. Later.